Mother, source of all creation, the fruit of spiritual hope, you offer your sacred ground of being to suffer and to cope with all the darkness, doubt, and anger of this lonely world, drawn into one miraculous space, where emptiness is swirled and flowed into a sea of blissful fecundity. Today's contemplation comes from the writings of Tyler and Douglas Gabriel, which can be found when you explore the virtual Temple of Wisdom at ourspirit.com. Those who have begun to follow the path of Sophia Christos are involved and active in world events, and understand that the Dark Brotherhood is not some nebulous esoteric concept tucked away neatly in a Rudolf Steiner lecture. These are forces that must be faced in order to develop our consciousness, which runs up against evil to help us wake up and become aware. It takes great effort and awareness to develop wisdom that can shed light on personal development and the contemporary affairs of the outer world. Spiritual development is about integrating the inner with the outer and finding the wisdom in both. To find wisdom, we seek all the places where life springs forth anew. Living thinking springs from a heart that has warmed up thinking. This higher thinking, imagination, has the power and brilliance to see into things, both within the self and in the outer world, or cosmos around us. Burying our head in the sand, or withdrawing into our shell, doesn't advance spiritual development. It is interaction between the inner and the outer that quickly develops the soul and spirit. In Buddhism, they call the inner path the small boat, and the integration of the inner and outer path the big boat. The small boat, known as Hinayana, helps the person who cannot control his lower appetites and desires, and it usually requires retreat from the outside world and living in a community of like-minded people who restrict exposure to the temptations of the outer world, where the 7 deadly sins run rampant. This hiding from temptation will not get the practitioner nearly as far as what is called the path of the householder. Householders integrate love, sex, fear, and the many exposures to temptations that could ruin a beginner on the spiritual path of self-development, seeking enlightenment. Householders work for everyone's enlightenment in the big boat, or Mahayana, until all people are helped to ascend to the divine. This dedication to help others is called the vow of the Bodhicitta, to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Spiritual aspirants who have found the mysteries and wisdom of Sophia Christos have taken the vow of Bodhicitta, and thus must integrate the inner spiritual effort to find wisdom with the effort to find wisdom in the living spirit of nature outside of themselves. Each human being is a 3D hologram of the universe, a microcosm of the macrocosm. Therefore, the initiate knows that she must find the parts of the divine outside of her and link them to the parts inside, completing a puzzle that is a copy of the cosmos itself. Every part of nature that lives and grows has a part of the human soul and spirit inside of it. The wakeful observer watches as spirit manifests through life on earth and follows the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. This cycle of seeming eternal life is the link to human birth, death, and reincarnation. Nature perfects herself through evolving each creation into a better and more adaptive living form. So too it is with the human being, who continues to perfect individualized soul and spiritual virtues, into a continuum of incarnations that evolve human qualities into divine qualities that are essentially eternal. This path of enlightenment gives wings to the soul, so that it might mount the skies to the spirit. The awakened soul, striving towards the spirit, must find the eternal in all things, and build new worlds with the effort. Looking out upon the chaos of the geopolitical scene in the world, and the stress and suffering that can ensue from attempting to integrate it meaningfully into your personal life, can leave one empty and looking for answers. Where do we find solid spiritual ground to stand on in this apocalyptic world that seems to attack us from all directions, whether through poisoned food, water, air, environment, or emotionally through the stress of war, crimes against children and humanity, world conflicts, poverty, painful relationships, and failing systems of support from churches, the government, family, and friends? It seems too bleak to look out of our shells or pull our heads up from our hole in the ground. Trying to figure out the machinations of evil in the hypermaterialistic world gives little time for creating solutions, and fatalism can begin to creep in until cynicism often takes deep root. Often lethargy sets in, and both the inner world and the outer world become something we put on hold because we have problems understanding its meaning and relationship to our own evolution. The duality of our world is a necessity to develop free and independent consciousness. It is painful. When the soul swings between idealism and materialism, many times it is fatalism that settles within the end. Spiritual development and awakening to our higher consciousness is actually a bridge over the chasm of fatalism. Merging the inner world and the outer world is possible once a worldview or cosmology is developed that gives purpose and meaning to human existence by explaining where we came from and where we're going in the future. We need to begin with the end in mind. If the major task of spiritual development is to merge the spiritual within with the spiritual without, perhaps the bridge is simply not to fall into fatalism, that nihilistic, agnostic, atheistic, pessimistic attitude of soul that is so prevalent in Western society. Changing fatalism into optimism is accomplished by getting an overview, a cosmology of who you are and what you plan to become. A cosmology is a map of the path back to our home of origin. The map is created by climbing to the highest ground you can find to get a clear perspective of where you are and where you wish to go. Then a clear path to the goal can be established. Enlightenment is found to be possible. When a spiritual initiate hears of problems in the world, he sees it as an opportunity for growth and advancement. Every horrible situation is an opportunity for the spirit to enter. Necessity is the mother of invention, and problems are an opportunity for solutions that advance human development. Evil is here to create an opportunity for good to become stronger. Suffering is there to create the chance to become free of attachment to the outside world. Every challenge is another opportunity for the giftedness in each of us to unfold. When we look upon the outside world and see the many terrible things going on, we can see an opportunity to work on our own point of view concerning these challenges. When a common place is found that has been tamed and transformed into an organ of supersensible perception, then the bridge to the outside problem is created, and new insight and a new perspective is achieved that may be able to solve the problem, or at least find meaning in it. We tend to see ourselves everywhere we look, or, in other words, project our inner condition upon the outside world. We create the heaven or hell we live in, and then find it in the outer world. The gods and goddesses, as well as heaven and hell, can be found within each awakened human spirit. This is the hope of transforming and redeeming our world of matter through the transformation of our spiritual self. It is this unending interest in the other person and the outside world that is the common characteristic of spiritually advanced beings. Interest in all things and patience with their development shows the wisdom that has been gleaned from within the human soul and spirit and applied to the outer world. By using your higher self to understand the confusion of our time brings order and higher meaning to contemporary affairs. The light of spirit, that which is not temporary and temporal, drives the enthusiasm that it takes to find and construct a worldview that illumines the spiritual in both the human domain and the outer world of matter. Matter is frozen spirit that is reignited through consciousness, freedom, and love. When matter is seen for its true nature, it becomes able to return to the spiritual world from whence it came. Humans use matter as a temporary shell in a world of physical substance that fools the human being into believing that matter is the only reality. When the seeker on the path realizes his or her own immortality through reincarnation, the natural process of birth, death, and rebirth no longer are seen as suffering without meaning in a world of dying matter. When the natural flow of the spirit into and out of matter is understood, wisdom is developed. This wisdom is the antidote for the fatalistic nihilism of materialism. Wisdom can become the foundation to develop faith in the divine, which then makes love, mercy, and grace available to any person who is deeply grateful to the Spirit. When this integration of inner and outer is refined into wisdom, heaven can blossom in the soul and in the world. Wisdom brings with her the blessings of the 7 heavenly virtues that can conquer the 7 deadly sins. This process can then become the bridge that spans the chasm between idealism and materialism that is found in the duality of modern times, that is played out on the stage of the world as battles between dark brotherhoods with evil agendas. Light dispels darkness by its very nature. The sisterhoods of light, the followers of wisdom, have always worked behind the scenes to dispel the darkness of these evil brotherhoods. The battle is both within and without. No one is exempt, and therefore integration with contemporary life is incumbent upon the seeker on the path of spiritual development. We need to focus on the big boat if we are to create a new ark that can weather the waves of evil and greed that drive the global geopolitical scene. We are one earth and one humanity. It is the job of spiritual initiates to engage in the battle and bring illumination to the dark paths of those who wish to fool humans into thinking that it is only matter that exists, when indeed all that there is comes from a world of spirit. Spirit is ready to flame courage into the limbs of all aspirants who wish to take up the banner of truth, beauty, and goodness, and bring wisdom and love into the world through freedom. Rise up and meet the world with all the strength you can to dispel ignorance and create a home for wisdom in your heart and in the world.